Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Bullying Reported Please podcast. I am your hostess, E. Jones Blacksher. Today, we'll be diving into two critical issues: domestic violence and bullying. October, the month of October is Domestic Violence and Bullying Awareness and Prevention Month. Domestic violence and bullying, they're not just isolated incidences, but part of a larger cycle of abuse that affects hundreds of thousands of lives annually, leaving victims, their families, their friends, their communities devastated. Even more heartbreaking is the fact that help is available, and many just don't know where to get it, or they're too afraid to seek help. So join us as we break the silence and empower one another to stand up, speak out, and make a difference. Domestic violence. When you hear domestic violence, the first thing you think about is physical. However, not necessarily. Domestic violence occurs when a person consistently aims to control their partner through physical, sexual, or emotional abuse. The United States Department of Justice defines domestic violence as a pattern of abusive behavior in any relationship that is used by one partner to gain or maintain control over another intimate partner. And sometimes you'll hear domestic violence, you'll hear intimate partner violence that's used as well. Domestic violence does not discriminate. It can affect people of any age, any gender, any race, socioeconomic status. It doesn't matter, or sexual orientation. It's a serious issue that can result in physical injury, psychological trauma, and in some cases, extreme cases, death. We need intervention, effective intervention, and also that support system that's critical in breaking this cycle of abuse. Let me give you a few stats on the prevalence of domestic violence. According to the CDC, whitehouse.gov, and the Federal Register, about 41% of women, and yes, 26% of men experienced contact sexual violence, physical violence, or stalking by an intimate partner during their lifetime. Staggering. And yes, men are victims as well. Over 61 million women and 53 million men have experienced psychological aggression by an intimate partner in their lifetime. Between 30 and 40% of Americans are impacted by sexual abuse, physical violence, or stalking by an intimate partner throughout their lifetime. It is a pattern of abusive behavior in a relationship. And it can also occur in intimate relationships, including marriage, cohabitation, dating, and even within a family. This is very, very, very serious. Domestic violence can take on many, many forms. Not just the physical, but the physical abuse as is there. Hitting, slapping, pushing, choking, or any other form of physical harm. That emotional and psychological abuse. Verbal insults, threats, manipulation, gaslighting. Gaslighting is where they try to twist you playing these psychological games into believing that you're crazy, that you're losing your mind. Isolation, they isolate from family and friends. And that there are other tactics that's designed to undermine a person's mental well-being or their self-esteem. The sexual abuse. Any forced or unwanted sexual contact or coercion. Financial abuse. Controlling a partner's access to money or resources, preventing them from working, using financial dependence as a means of control. This is control. Stalking. Wow. Repeated unwanted attention or harassment. And it often involves following someone or monitoring their activities. Technological abuse. Using technology. You know, you got this little thing on your phone, the tracking app, the this, the that. Using technology to track, harass, control a partner. Monitoring their phone calls, their texts, even the social media. It could go, this is a form of abuse. Now, let's talk about bullying. You may say, what's bullying got to do with domestic violence? Well, let's see. Bullying also refers to repeated intentional harm directed at someone who is perceived as vulnerable. It too can take many forms. Physical, hitting, pushing, other forms of physical aggression. Verbal, name calling, making derogatory comments. Social, excluding someone from a group, spreading rumors or other actions aimed at damaging someone's reputation or relationships. And then there's cyberbullying, using technology, such as social media or texting to harass or threaten someone. And again, you wonder, what does bullying have to do with domestic violence? Well, both are related forms of abuse, though they occur in different contexts, but both involve power, control, and the use of aggression to dominate another person. So while bullying itself does not directly cause domestic violence, there's still potential connections between the two. They are related forms of abuse. Again, they occur in different contexts, but it's that power. It is the power. And research has been conducted on the correlation between bullying and domestic violence, but not nearly enough has been done to state definitively that bullying has a direct correlation or is a precursor to domestic violence. So I did not say bullying causes domestic violence. No, not enough research, it hadn't been done. However, some researchers do find a correlation. But again, it's not enough to substantiate that claim. Now, again, they have similarities. A pattern of behavior. People who engage in bullying may be more likely to engage in other forms of abusive behavior later in life, including domestic violence. Early aggressive behavior can be. It can be precursors. I didn't say it is. I said it can be to abusive tendencies in relationships. That victimization cycle. Individuals who are bullied may experience long-term emotional and psychological effects, including low self-esteem, depression, and anger. And sometimes these experiences can manifest in unhealthy relationship patterns, either as a victim or perpetrators of domestic violence. Some of the shared risk factors, both bullying and domestic violence, often stem from similar risk factors, such as exposure to violence in the home, substance abuse, mental health issues. Children who witness domestic violence at home may also engage in bullying behaviors as a way of coping or exerting that control. They don't have it at home, so that they have no control over what's going on at home with their parents or with the adults in their home. So they take this aggression out. They go to school or wherever, and they take this aggression out on someone else. That learned behavior, exposure to bullying or domestic violence, it normalizes the aggression. They think it's okay. Well, Dad did it to my mom, so this is what love is. No, it's not. This kind of behavior make individuals more likely to accept or, again, perpetrate abusive behaviors in future relationships. So what we should do, what we need to do, we have to show our children, our loved ones, we have to show them, lead by example, show them what love is. We have to demonstrate that. Both bullying and domestic violence have long-lasting effects on the victims, including mental health issues like depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. The PTSD, that is trauma. You're being traumatized in these kind of relationships. And in order to prevent and address both of these, bullying and domestic violence, it's going to require education, intervention, support systems to ensure that the victims receive the help they need. You say, "But why stay? I'm gone. I would be out." You're not in that situation. That's easier said than done. We don't know. Again, the self-esteem is down. They're depressed. That control, that dependency is what the perpetrator of domestic violence is seeking, as well as the bully. Control. They want to control you. Addressing, though, bullying early on is a very important aspect of empowering our young people to create a safe, a respectful environment. So raising awareness about the signs of domestic violence could also provide additional protection and support to those in need. Why don't they just leave? I wouldn't stay in this situation. Well, they could always walk off. They could always leave. Well, where are they going? Where would they go? And how would you help them? How would you help? Rather than passing judgment on the victim, we should be encouraging, pointing them in a direction to get help. And some of the resources that are available, call 911, your local emergency number, law enforcement agency. And they can, there are other things that can help as well. Someone you trust. Someone you trust. Turn to a friend, a neighbor, a relative, a co-worker, your pastor, your spiritual advisor. Turn to them for support. The hardest thing to do for victims, and I'm not speaking from what I heard, I'm speaking from what I know. The hardest thing for a victim of domestic violence to do is to tell someone. Is to tell someone. That is one of those things where we suffer in silence. It's going to get better. If I would do this, if I would do that, then they would stop this and they would stop that. someone you trust. Turn to a friend. Tell someone. Get the help that you need to get out of that relationship, to get out of that abuse. We have the National Domestic Violence Hotline, which is 800-799-SAFE. 800-799-SAFE. Call the hotline for crisis intervention and referrals to resources such as women's shelters. Well, there are a lot of women's shelters out there, and men have been turned away from women's shelters, men that are victims of domestic violence. Yes, and men are the ones that's not going, very reluctant to tell. I'm not saying they're not going to, but they're very reluctant. Why? Because men are perceived to have power, because they're men. So men are least likely to report domestic violence. Your healthcare provider, your women's shelter, the emergency shelter. They can give you advice on legal matters, advocacy, and support services. Please, a counselor, a mental health center. Counseling and support groups for women in abusive relationships are available in most communities. Now, there are also men support groups out there as well. And your court, get a restraining order that legally mandates the abuser to stay away from you or face arrest. Local advocates might be available to help guide you through that process. Unfortunately, several times, restraining orders have failed. Unfortunately. So we see all of this, and we don't want to act. We don't want to do that because this happened to so and so, and see what happened to her. So I don't want that to happen to me. I'm staying for my kids. There are a lot of reasons we stay in abusive relationships. However, again, I fought back. I left the relationship. I left, actually, the marriage. I left it with my child. And no, it was not easy. But however, I was fortunate that I had a career. I had funds coming in. And I had my family. Thank God for family that you love and you can depend on. So again, this is a crisis that we have to face. On next week, we're going to talk about dating violence in teens. We're going to talk about that. Then we're going to talk about other areas in the domestic violence arena. The whys, the why nots, and even talk about the victimization a little bit further. But as we come to a close of today's episode on domestic violence and bullying awareness, I do want to thank each of you for joining this important conversation. These are complex issues, but it's one that we can confront together by staying informed, supporting one another, and fostering an environment where it's okay to ask for help. If you or someone you know is struggling, remember that you are not alone. So let's work together to break the stigma, encourage connection, and create a world where we can have healthy relationships. Again, I just want to thank you so much for being part of this crucial conversation. Please take care of yourself and others. I am E. Jones Blackshirt, your hostess for Bullying Reported Please. Let's look after our loved ones. Let's look after our neighbors, our co-workers. Until next time, stay safe, stay connected, and remember, there's always hope. And don't forget to like, share, and you can see all our podcasts on the website, www.bullyingrip.org. Until next time, bye-bye.